The whole Charlie Kirk situation. That's a great example of a societal projection that it really affected me personally. So we use language to describe the world we live in, when in reality, language determines where in the world you live.
Our words have frequency and vibration. And so when you're speaking these spells into reality, you're feeling a certain way, and the law of attraction, the law of correspondence, the way it works is whatever frequency and vibration you're vibrating at.
Welcome to Your True Alchemy podcast,
where we discuss ancient wisdom meets modern mastery that's going to allow you to up-level your business, your relationships, your health, your wealth, and your life. And today we want to talk about conscious language.
Conscious language is not so conscious in today's normal waking society.
Yeah.
One thing we've lost touch with is the power of the spoken word.
Yeah. And empowering people to use language to create what they want. And before we get into the conscious language piece, let's talk a little bit about neuro-linguistic programming and how that can benefit us in terms of understanding the frame of creating conscious language.
Absolutely. So NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, is essentially decoding what's going on in our brains, right? The visuals, the pictures, the sounds, the feelings, the smells, the taste, the self-talk. And all of that is this package, right, with our thinking. And when those senses match what's going inside, right, what we feel, we also speak based on how we're processing information and data. So that's language. We're decoding, essentially, the language that's inside, and then our environment dictates how we interpret that, how we label that. And so essentially we use language to describe the world we live in, when in reality, language determines where in the world you live.
So to me, big picture, NLP means the study of language and the words that we speak out loud, but also the communication that happens inside the mind and body connection. And one of the things that we believe in the NLP world, it's fantastic for coaching. It's fantastic for helping people repattern their unconscious mind to change behavior. It's fantastic for selling. It's fantastic for speaking. It's fantastic for persuasion, right? And one of the things that we think of in terms of a belief system in the NLP world, we call it a presupposition, is that everybody has their own individual perception of reality. And we talk about this in quantum physics, is that what you perceive in reality, you will create in reality. And we come from a place of compassion and love, because everybody is right to have their own belief systems. We talk about the NLP model of communication and what Brandon was talking about, how we process information, and based upon our filtering system, which means have we had bad experience in the past? Have we had amazing experiences? Our cosmology, what's important to us, what's not important to us, our beliefs and attitudes, and all the traumas and dramas that we've endured is going to create how we perceive reality and what is right and what is wrong for us. And it all happens to be part of the eye of the observer, and there is no right or wrong way to think.
In other words, how you perceive it is how you receive it.
And so we believe in respecting everyone's model of the world. That doesn't mean you have to agree with it.
And what's fascinating is language is the only external way we know of what's going on inside. And so that's why language is so important. It's 7% of our communication.
Right.
Right. Body language is 55% of communication, right? We can tell so much about what's going on, about someone's physical state and how they look, their facial expressions, eye patterns, so many things, right? Posture, gesture, and then tonality.
Right. And tonality is how you say something, not exactly the words you're choosing to say. Because I could say to him, baby, I love you. I love you so much. Or if I am annoyed with my husband, which happens from time to time, I would say, baby, I love you.
I am
so
in love with you.
Oh, I freaking love you.
So that's 38% is tonality.
Right.
So 38% plus 55 is 93%. 93% of our communication as human beings is out of our awareness, because it's usually so unconscious it just slips right by, because most people are only paying attention to the words.
Right. Most people do not or have not been trained yet in, fine tuning, having sensory awareness and paying attention to people's body language, and then also paying attention to tonality. Right. And so these are all things that we think about when we talk about conscious language. Another NLP presuppositions what we like to bring in is that when you are communicating with somebody, having a belief system that communication is the response you get. And what this means is that I'm responsible for my communication 100%. And if I'm not doing my due diligence to communicate in a way that he can effectively understand and hear me, then if I get a response that I do not like, then that's on me, right? And so this is a perfect example. So in our company, we had an executive assistant. And so where was the breakdown in communication? Did I not give enough detail or enough information for her to then understand what I truly mean? And we see a breakdown in communication all the time when we're working with our teammates, our colleagues, being business partners, even in our relationship, right?
It's a feedback loop.
It's a feedback loop.
And the feedback you get from that communication is how you can pivot and adjust the communication. It's happening in society right now, right? People are speaking and saying something out in society, and then people are like, that triggered me. And so there's this thing where they're not also taking responsibility for how they feel based on the way someone else speaks, which is why there's so much interesting things going on with, our First Amendment and the right to free speech.
Free speech, yeah. I mean, this is a huge thing. And realizing this is another presupposition, I like to bring these up because it's a really great way to filter and look at reality to create success, if you will. The other one is the map is not the territory. And what does that mean? It means that the words that people choose to use have in our world, we call it different internal representation. But basically, it's describing the movie that's going on inside their mind, the pictures they're making in their mind, the sounds they're hearing in their mind, the feelings they're feeling throughout their body, and then the AD, the self-talk that is talking and processing that information. And so the word love, to me, being in a loving, kind relationship, is completely different to me right now than if you had talked to me, in 2011 or even before that, where I was in abusive relationships. And so love meant to me pain and suffering and being in a relationship where I wasn't respected and hurt. Right. And so that was the association to that word back in those days. So every word that we spout out has a unique internal movie that triggers inside of the person that is experiencing these words.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And words are just labels, right? And so those labels are highly charged somatically with information and with emotions. And so this is why we focus so much with the work that we do as performance coaches and trainers is the 95% of the unconscious, because that's where our belief systems and attitudes are. And language just kind of brings all that stuff to the surface.
Oh, yeah. And the map is not the territory is a very jargonistic way of explaining it. But I like the metaphor of, if we were going to go into the Uintas. So we live in Utah, and we're 45 minutes from some of the most beautiful, spectacular forests, right? High mountain lakes, gorgeous pine trees. And if Brandon and I were going up there to camp with some friends, the map would look completely different than when we're actually on the road that take the truck up.
Exactly. Like when you look at the map versus when you physically get up there, completely different, right? And so that's how there's that contrast. So how would you explain conscious language? What is conscious language to someone who thinks they're conscious or utilizing conscious words?
Well, first of all, none of us are truly 100% conscious. So I just want to be aware of that, because you can say
we're doing the best we can.
We're
with the
awake or
we
we're
have.
conscious, right? We're all, so I come from the presupposition that we're in this earth school to grow and transform as a human being and to become more consciously aware and whole, right? And so taking the word conscious, for me, it means to communicate in a way that you are consciously choosing your words, your body language to get the most empowered result with an individual. It's also, for me, coming from a background of not being very kind to myself. It means being kind and benevolent, or how do I use it? Benevolent. Kind and benevolent with myself. How do I communicate with myself? How do I bring conscious awareness to the things that I'm thinking, to the things that I'm hearing inside my mind, what I'm feeling in my body, and what I'm saying to myself. And then how do I effectively most communicate to someone what I'm thinking, feeling, hearing, and thinking to myself in a way that they can understand? So how can I become consciously aware to use the words and body language and tonality in a way that's actually going to activate you the way that you think, not how I think? That's conscious language to me.
Beautiful.
How about you?
I think of it as the first step to transformation is beginning to control the language and the words that come out of our mouth, because you're thinking more toward what you desire. So in other words, if you're focused on what you want, you'll speak the words of focusing. It's like the path of least resistance. You'll just go A to B instead of like to get to C. It's like A, B, D, back to C. And because there's so many people that say, well, I don't want to be sick. I need to get a better job, right? I have to get out of debt. And so we're speaking unconscious language because all the things that we don't want, we're actually focusing on, and then we're casting that spell into our future, into our reality. And so I look at it as conscious language is just simply using the path of least resistance through language and labels to get to where we want to go without all the drama and the away from and the ups and downs, the yo-yo effect of how we create results, how we create success.
Yeah. I also look at it that way, the power of the spoken word to create reality, right? And you touched on that before, that, we describe our world, but it's really actually consciously and unconsciously creating. Because I talked about my story in a past episode, but I was really good at communicating exactly what I didn't want. And I was so freaking surprised, because I would say I was a loser magnet. And then I would get into the same relationship over and over again. I would move from town to town. And a lot of people say this, they have identities and then they speak it out into existence. And then they're so surprised when it shows up in reality, because our words have frequency and vibration. And so when you're speaking these spells into reality, you're feeling a certain way. And the law of attraction, the law of correspondence, the way it works is whatever frequency and vibration you're vibrating at, you're going to pull more of that in. It also is how, from my perspective, your unconscious mind becomes more whole, is because whatever is unconscious in you is then going to be attracted. And the way that it's unconscious will show up in your language. Yes?
Yes. And these attachments, or these identities create attachments, and that's from our childhood programming, right? 0 to 7, and then like say 8 to whatever, 13, programming from mom, dad, whoever raised us, is a lot of times the language and the words they used and the way they thought and the behavior that we were in as far as being raised in that vibration, that frequency, that's an imprint on us somatically and also anchored into our nervous system at the unconscious, subconscious level. So it's definitely people are really going through society saying all the things they don't want. And this is how you know language is unconscious. If they're saying, gosh, it's so hard to change. It's really difficult to be healthy. Or it's not
even possible to change.
Or I don't believe
it's impossible.
I can. If that's the words and the language we're using, then we're already setting ourselves up to utilize and access those subconscious software programming that's built in, and we have to learn how we can override that. And the first thing you do is you learn language to override it, so you know how you're speaking, and then your thoughts are matching your feelings, and your feelings are aligned with your actions, which really kind of comes back to, integrity. And the reality is, are you integrous with yourself, your body? Do you trust yourself? Are you aligned? You mentioned, are you whole? These are all the ways we become more aware of language to gain more wholeness.
Ooh, and I love what you said about integrity, because, asking ourselves, are we truly, I also would say conscious language is what you just said, which is speaking out loud truly what you're congruent with inside, and your actions back up.
Exactly.
If you were.
Yeah. So
do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Well, it's like what we talk about with toward and away from motivation.
Right.
And so if you're in a situation where you're looking at your life, right? Maybe you're not as grateful as you'd like to feel because you see a lot of scarcity, you feel a lot of pain, you don't have a lot of resources or the appearance of resources and abundance around you. And so you're focused on that, but then you're working hard or you're taking some form of action to get out of that situation of, say, maybe, lack, right? Scarcity. So if you're consistently focusing on what you have or what you don't want because you've got to put food on the table, you got debt, bills to pay, student loans to get out of, right? All of the language that we use, just listen to that language and how it feels. It's a low vibration. It's a super low frequency. I've got, daycare for the kids, right? All these things that you're focused on.
I need to.
The bills, right? You're
Right.
focused on what you don't want instead of just going and creating more prosperity, more connection, more transformation, more relationships, and making more money. Because in that process, if you're making impact and transformation, the money follows. And then we're not focused on that. So how do we get away from focusing on what we don't have and what we don't want to focusing on what we do want, what we desire most?
And it's training yourself, because nobody is aware of this until this has become aware.
You
right?
literally have to train your brain.
Right, and you're
Brain
training your brain.
training.
And we are not taught to speak in a positive way. I mean, maybe we've said, think positive, but really what does that mean? And what are the words that are going to activate and be the frequency and vibration to then create what you want? And the words that you were explaining in the NLP world, and think of NLP as a fantastic model of language we can use to create success. And so NLP breaks down those types of words, and we call it modal operators. There's ones of success, and then there's ones of negativity, meaning there's ones of impossibility and putting you in a metaphorical but real, very real box and or prison of your own making. And they sound like this: I have to. I need to, I must, I can't, it is impossible, you should, right? All of these words, frequency, you could say, if you're listening to somebody in that conversation, you could say, oh, wow, they at this moment do not currently believe that they have control of their situation.
You can postulate based on the language they're using: need, have to, must, can't, shouldn't, that
Won't.
they're thinking inside their nervous system. They're thinking of what they want, but they're comparing it to what they don't want. So there's some kind of comparison. There's some kind of story that they're focusing on that causes them to essentially sound like they're not in control of their behavior, that they're not in control of their situation, that they're not in control of their life.
Right.
That's what that comes down to, right? So that's what we mean by unconscious language versus conscious language. So think about it. Think about how this feels. I must get healthy.
I have to.
If I don't get healthy,
I need.
I had a client just say this the other night. He said, if I don't get healthy, cancel, clear, delete, everyone who listens to this, I may have a heart attack. Cancel, clear, delete.
Yeah.
So you're focused on healing and doing the work so you don't have a heart attack. Like, that's awful, right? What do you want instead of that? Longevity, frequency, health, perfect health, optimization, right? Vitality. So if we're saying something that we don't want and we always put a don't or a not or a negation in front of it, we're still focused on it.
Right.
Think about this. Don't think about a purple rhino.
But you can't think about what you don't want to think about without first thinking about it. Think about it.
Don't slip and fall. You have to think about slipping and falling, right? Winter is around the corner. Lots of
Right.
snow and ice. People go, careful, don't slip and fall. Instead of saying, be careful, sure-footed, watch your step.
Right.
Right. And so what happens if you've ever done this where you actually go, oh gosh, you're carrying something, your hands are full and you're like, I got to be careful. I don't want to slip. And then all of a sudden you do. It's because you thought about it. Then your body actually went there to the time that you slipped and fell in the past. And then it's like, oh, projection in the future. Let's do it again. Because that's really where all the body was going.
And this is, we have forgotten. And I believe that we are a product and giving, so much reverence for our ancestor. I mean, if you, look at anything that talks about the settlers that came to America and what happened during the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages and all the different things that, every single race around the world has gone through trauma, genocide, rape. We've gone through
Abuse.
a lot as humans. We are a product of trauma, right? And that doesn't mean that we don't have a choice of how we speak now. And so one of the, the thoughts of the mystery school in Egypt, they talk about, and this goes around from all different traditions. One in Egypt, they talk about the creator god Ptah. Ptah. He was one of the gods that supposedly created this reality with his consort Sekhmet. And first he
conceived
everything
into his heart. So think about what that means is the love, right? The focus of joy and how he wants it to be. He conceived it into his heart, and then he spoke it into existence.
Right. So the power of the spoken word created reality, but first he felt it in his heart.
Which is like the love of money, saying the love of money is what you'll do with it, right? If you want to go help people, you'll do that. If you want to go hurt people, you'll do that.
Right.
So it's the conceiving of this in your heart space, in your heart chakra, your center of love.
And in the Jewish Bible, or some people call it the Old Testament or the Torah, they talk about in Genesis, and God said, let there be light, right? And so he said, and he spoke light into existence, which is frequency and vibration. So he created reality through the process of the spoken word. They also talk about, in the Hindu tradition, talking about Brahma creating the reality with the power of Om, the sound, the frequency and vibration. So, this is, and we could go all day long on all different traditions around the world, talk about how this reality is created through sound, frequency, and vibration. And then it goes now into quantum physics and string theory and everything. So we, as science now, is catching up to the ancient tradition just to prove our point here. And I truly believe that we are, Jesus talked about this, that truly, that we will do more than he did, should we choose to it. And every religion around the world talks about how we are God in potential. We are children, and we are sons and daughters of spirit. We are all from the one. We're all from the universal intelligence or ether, right? And so what are we choosing to use our words for is my point.
That's why we call this your true alchemy, because when you alchemize with tone, frequency, vibration, all of that is casting an energy, a frequency. If you're not into energy, investigate that, right? Because we are energetic beings, right? Our auras cannot be seen, but they can be picked up on, different devices that test for frequencies.
And some people can see them. Some people's gifts are coming online right now.
Absolutely. We have all kinds of telepathic gifts and visual gifts, right? And channels. And so energy is that thing that you're giving off. So you have to ask yourself, if you are in this stuck state, if you are in this stuck situation that you feel like there's no way out, what frequency and energy are you giving off? Are you putting out there? Because that is the spells that we're casting. How you perceive it is how you receive it. So if this is a scarce, non-abundant world, then we're going to create more situations that show us how non-abundant we are, right? Versus even if we almost like you're lying to your nervous system.
Yeah, it's called cognitive dissonance, and it works.
It's like literally...
Joe Dispenza talks about this.
Yeah, don't believe the neurons that fire together wire together. Don't believe the situation you're in, and just start to find the little tiny things, the crumbs that you're grateful for.
Right.
Because if you can just do that, you can start to already shift the way you feel, because to me, everything's about how you feel. And if you're in an abundant, grateful state, full of gratitude, that's how you create, and that's how you actually shape your world versus casting all the spells of problems.
Right.
The spells
It's a feedback loop.
Negativity.
Right. It's a feedback loop of hell, or hamster wheel of hell, or whatever you want. And you have the power to speak and feel no matter what is going on. You have the power to feel a certain way about the circumstance.
And there is a way you can alchemize your business, your life, your relationship, your energy and frequency levels. So when you're alchemizing, you're playing with energies and frequencies. That's how you're figuring out, because what works for you may not work for me. What works for Deb may or may not work for me all the time. So it's like, it's your alchemy, finding your alchemy and your way of doing it.
And everybody has their own truth, and everybody has their own true alchemy. And a lot of people will get on me, no, there's a one truth. And yes, there is a one truth, should you choose to believe that. And yes, we all have truths. And, it's another law. And these are just guidelines of the universe. Some people say there's 12 universal laws. Some people say there's 7 hermetic laws. That goes into Egyptian and Greek mythology. And one of the principles is that there is a central truth and everything is mind, but then we all come down and experience polarity in this life school that we're experiencing right now. And so being able to hold two controversial topics at the same time and know that they can both be right to the person that is in that perspective is an art. Because when it comes to conscious language, having compassion and love, I mean, this is Christ consciousness, accepting everyone for who they are, and they have the right to believe what they believe, no matter how heinous you may feel it is.
That's their belief system.
That's their belief system, and their soul has a path for that situation.
That's what's so hard for people right now in society to do, is hold on to two paradoxes. I think that's a really good point. We've seen this happening all over the news in different, wars and different situations.
It's right or wrong.
It's like there's a right and there's a wrong, and there's a right way and a wrong way to do everything.
And there's only one truth.
And the reality of that,
it's not black and white,
is already putting yourself in a box, because there's not a right way and a wrong way to build a business. There's a million ways to do that. There's not a right and a wrong way to transform your life. There's a million ways to do that.
Maybe there's a right and wrong way to you, and everybody has their core values and beliefs according to what they believe to be true. And so maybe you think it's right or wrong for you. But casting judgment on someone else, that's coming from a place of God consciousness. And from my perspective, it's not for us to say what is right and wrong for other people, and sending people love and light and compassion no matter what they believe. Now, that's not to say that people that are hurting people physically right now, that's the right thing to do, right? We do have laws of how we communicate and stay in society and respect other people. But the general idea is that we respect people and we do not do harm to other people, right? And at the same time, taking the level of responsibility for ourselves. And so this comes to the forefront of the conversation about conscious language and censoring of language. And is it right to, if I feel something, speaking out hate to someone else, I wouldn't do that. That's just not the way that I'm functioning. And, can we censor somebody that's doing that?
Yeah, it's one of those tough things. Like, I certainly wouldn't want to put that frequency and energy into the universe, because I know what it can do. Yeah, I know that there's a consequence, right? There is a cause and effect of putting that frequency out there, putting that reactionary type of thinking, behavior, and out there that I don't want to live in, right? It's like when someone comes to us and says, we work with a lot of practitioners, entrepreneurs. Like, if someone says, gosh, it's just so hard to make money, I don't believe that. Now, I appreciate and respect how it could be hard for them, but that doesn't mean I have to hold that belief system to be true, because it's not true in my world. And this is a great example of okay, so how is it possible this person's saying it's hard to make money? Well, it's because maybe there's something going on in their nervous system, their body, that's got money trauma, confidence blocks, perfectionism, imposter syndrome, all the stuff that shows up, right? Self-worth. Whereas if they could have the confidence to have more conversations, put themselves out there, money would feel easier to make.
Right.
It would be easier to communicate with clients. So maybe it is a language issue, which what we find a lot of people, the reason why they reject sales or they dislike sales, or some people just flat out love money but hate sales, it's because of language. It's because of communication, right? They don't feel communicating. They don't feel confident in communicating what they do and who they do it with, and how can they present that offer in a way that more people start to say yes, right? And so they can handle that. So that's really what we're talking about here, is these belief systems. And so when somebody comes to us and says, this belief system, I have compassion, I can respect their model of the world, I don't have to buy into it.
Right.
But I can absolutely hold space and say, that's fascinating, I'm curious. I don't believe that. How is it possible that you believe that? And I can say delete, 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 cancel, clear, delete, because in my mind, I don't want to take on their belief system. And what's happening right now is most of us are carrying around other people's belief systems from some soundbite they heard. And then it's like, oh yeah, that guy is XYZ.
Right.
And you don't even believe that, but you picked up that belief system from social media or the news or something else.
And I think it's important because, we talk about triggers and being in the trauma space, being aware that people have traumas, right? And so they do get triggered. When somebody has stuff underneath the hood and has experienced a really traumatic experience, sometimes you get triggered. As a human being, you get triggered, right? And from my perspective, this is my humble perspective, I believe that I'm responsible for how I feel. Now, if somebody was physically violently hurting me, that is I'm being victimized by somebody, right? And for me to point at somebody and say that because of something they've said about me, maybe they don't like me, maybe they're watching this video right now and they're, commenting that I'm a terrible person and I don't know what the F I'm saying. And we've had Facebook ads where I'm trying to give a good message and then people are like, you bitch, blah, 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 right? Like whatever. But if they're saying that about me, I'm like, okay, whatever. But I have a choice to get triggered by that. And I'll tell you, in the beginning, the first time that this happened on a larger scale, it hurt. Like we had some people say some really nasty things about us.
Throw some darts out there.
Right. And that's okay, right? There was stuff to learn from that. There was stuff to look within and find, is there truths in that conversation? Is it because I believe it goes both ways. How do I attract that? How did I draw that in? What is my responsibility in that relationship? And then how can I release it because that's somebody else's perception, right? And so for like going back to hate speech, it's a gray topic. Like there's many shades of this. And from my perspective, somebody hating on someone online just because they have a different belief system, we have a choice to get plugged into it or not, right?
See, that's the thing is what you just said, though, taking responsibility for like, if you call in a projection that sounds like, it just seems like it's out of the blue.
Describe a projection so everybody knows what you're talking about.
So like, I'll give an example, with the whole Charlie Kirk situation. Mm-hmm. That's a great example of a societal projection that it really affected me personally. And when I found out about that, I was like, my gosh, how could this be? Like, that's pretty awful, like that somebody dislikes somebody so much to the point where they want to, take matters in their own hands and take someone's life. So that's, first of all, that's crazy. And it just, the fact that we lost.
And we don't, again, like, let's play devil advocate too. And this, like, by the way, prayers to his family,
Absolutely.
prayers to him, to his soul, all of the people that are suffering right now, and everybody's been affected in this horrible situation. And for the person that whoever did do that, like, what happened to that person?
Sure.
What is their history? Not to say that it's okay to do that. And probably people are going to think that I'm a terrible person for saying that. But, like, we got to look at it from a bigger perspective that, like, okay, so where's the wounding? Hurt people, right? Where's the wounding that caused that? And why, and what is it causing other people then to attack other people and then have this war back and forth, essentially?
Yeah, so for this, when this event happened, I was really sinking into it. And the projection for me was like, man, like what a loss, and I had lost my father not that long ago in 2022. And, we had a year of loss, but it felt like that. And then I was like, maybe there's some grief here that I'm still working through with our 2 dogs that passed away in the same year, with Deb's brother, my father, our business dying for a bit there. Like everything was rebuilding in a way. And so that loss of this global scale of everyone paying attention to this figure like Charlie, and all of a sudden it brought stuff up for me. And so I'm like, well, where can I take responsibility for how I feel, based on this amount of loss? And that's really what the way I look at it is so many people are looking at, the situation and it's like, I'm a victim of, or they're celebrating some situation of, this victimship. So it's like, it's fascinating that we're dichotomously working through this right and wrong. And this is where language is not very clear and right and wrong, because who am I to say it's not okay for someone to be a victim?
Right.
If that's them and they want to choose to live in victim consciousness versus, say, something like universal consciousness or their higher power consciousness or Christ consciousness or whatever that is for you, like that's a different frequency. And it's a choice to live in that frequency.
Yeah. And by the way, our perception is not the right one either, right?
Right.
We're just talking about our perception, but we could be completely wrong.
Well,
and for anyone to say that they know everything there is to know, or that there is one truth and it's been guided through me, is, from my perspective, the ego talking.
Right.
And so going back to this conversation, having so much compassion and love and respect and reverence for all humans. And I was listening to a podcast with Aubrey Marcus, and he had this Dakota chief, And he just said it so beautifully and simply is like, we all bleed red, right? We are all brothers and sisters. We're all from the one. We may have, we're like family, right? We may squabble and, have different perspectives of the reality, but at the end of the day, we are all one people. And that's why it's so important to get neutral about these situations and take radical self-ownership and understand where this started in the first place.
Yeah.
Where did it start?
Well, and it's generations and lineage.
Right. A tribalism.
Tribalism and lineages of fighting and traumas and, genocide. And I mean, in the last 4 years, we've been to Peru, Mexico, Maya, Egypt.
And we're going back.
We're all the same.
We are.
Everything was so similar.
Yeah, and we're so much more than we think we are.
We are so, at any given moment, we're so much more than we think we are.
With humility.
And we're not that different. We're really not different at all.
No.
The architecture's a little different, but in reality, the stones were nearly the same.
I know.
It was fascinating how I was like, this looks exactly like we're looking at Machu Picchu and we're in Egypt. So it's like, explain that, folks. Like,
right.
Makes no sense that we're fighting over these nuances and these little things when it goes back to, if you want to be away from motivated in your language and that can propel you to get some success, great. Be away from motivated. If you get to a point where that doesn't work in your life, which it just comes down to results, do you like what you're doing? Are you happy doing it? Are you feeling abundant, happy, joyful, loving, grateful? And if you're not, then try something else.
Right.
Do something different, a new habit, right? That little 1% a day, little change, little shift. And I think that's what's fascinating is if it's not working, right? Try motivating yourself toward information, toward language.
And by the way, what he means by away from versus towards, away from means that essentially, and a lot of people believe that we're motivated two ways, right? One is by pain and one is by pleasure. And so what we're talking about is using our language to describe reality of what we want and describing the heaven on earth that we can create instead of getting motivated by the pain. And in the next episode that we're going to be doing, we're going to be talking about motivation. We're going to talk about how to figure out where you are in your motivation and then how to get motivated easily at will. We're also going to talk about the history of where this breakdown of communication really started. Where did it get taken out of schools? Because I'm just going to let you know, it is really easy to manipulate and quote unquote do population mind control when people don't understand language. Because when you can use language in a hypnotic way to guide people to be motivated to buy certain things, to start agendas, to fight each other, to then distract.
Because did you know language is used now as like a weapon?
Right.
And hypnosis is being used on the population of humanity throughout this planet every single day.
Yeah. And hypnosis is not a bad thing.
Hypnosis is a
It's
beautiful
fantastic.
thing. And it's just a tool, right? You've
Yeah.
got a hammer. You can build a cathedral. You could really harm someone with a blunt object like a hammer, right? So it's like, it's a tool. Hypnosis can be used for healing. It can be used for transformation. It can be used to a deeper discovery of yourself.
Right.
Right?
And it can be used for creating exactly what you want because it is the power of the spoken word. So
It could also be used to put a blanket over you.
it can also be used to motivate you in a direction that isn't even your soul's purpose.
It's like, look over here.
Yep.
Look over here. That's hypnosis.
Sleight of hand.
It could be distracting. It can be used for a distraction, and makes you feel really good at the end of the day, but you don't realize rights are being taken away.
And it's really fascinating because people are like, I don't want to learn hypnosis. It's scary. It's a work of the devil, whatever. So that has been an installation in people's minds because if you actually did understand language and hypnosis, you can't be manipulated.
Yeah.
So
You understand because it's going through your filters. So we're going to dive more into language because there's so much to talk about.
part 2 of this,
Part 2, conscious language.
and we'll see you soon.
Thanks. Your true alchemy.